I did something at my father's funeral that I can never take back. Something that half my family thinks was justified and the other half thinks makes me a monster. And honestly, 3 months later, I'm still not sure which side is right. My father died on a Tuesday. By Thursday, my older sister Rachel had already planned the entire funeral, chosen the flowers he would have hated, and written a eulogy that made him sound like Father of the Year. By Saturday, at the reception, I'd had enough. I stood up in front of 75 people, family, friends, his co-workers, and I told the truth. All of it. Every birthday he missed, every school play he skipped, every time he looked right through me like I was invisible. I had a list. Actual receipts. I'd been keeping track for years, and I didn't even realize it until I started putting it all together. Rachel's face went white. My mother ran out of the room. My aunt called me cruel. My uncle said it was about time someone said it. My sister hasn't spoken to me since, and I'm not sure I care. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I got there. Because this didn't start at the funeral. This started 34 years ago, the day I was born. My name is Jessica. I'm 34 years old, the middle child of 3. Rachel is 37, golden, and perfect. My younger brother Tyler is 29, and somehow he escaped most of this by being the baby and a boy. I'm a high school teacher in Portland. Single. No kids. The unremarkable one. That's how I've always thought of myself. The unremarkable one. Not ugly, but not beautiful like Rachel. Not failing, but not exceptional. Not hated, but not particularly loved either. Just there. Taking up space. Filling the gap between the daughter my parents adored and the son they doted on. Growing up, I told myself stories to make it okay. Rachel was the oldest, so of course she got more attention. She was breaking new ground, being the first at everything. Tyler was the baby, so naturally they wanted to protect him more. And me, I was independent. Self-sufficient. I didn't need as much. That's what I told myself. But the truth I didn't want to admit. I spent my entire childhood trying to earn the kind of love they gave Rachel automatically. Every Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's house was the same. Rachel would arrive, and the entire energy would shift. Dad would light up. Literally light up. His face would transform. He'd hug her, ask about her week, listen to every detail about her job, her apartment, her friends. 20 minutes of dedicated attention, at least. Then Tyler would show up. Dad would clap him on the back, make some joke about sports or cars, offer him a beer. They'd laugh together. Easy. Comfortable. Then I'd arrive. And Dad would say, "That's nice, honey," and go back to whatever he was doing. I'm not exaggerating. That's not bitterness talking. That's what happened. Every single Sunday for 15 years after I moved out, I tried everything to get his attention. I got my master's degree. He sent a card. Rachel got promoted at work. He took her to dinner to celebrate. I bought my first house. He said congratulations and asked Rachel for advice about his own home renovation. I won Teacher of the Year at my school. He forgot to come to the ceremony because he was helping Rachel move into her new apartment. Every milestone, every achievement, every moment where I thought, maybe this time he'll see me. He never did. And the worst part, nobody acknowledged it. It was like this big secret everyone knew but nobody talked about. Rachel was the favorite. Everyone knew it. Everyone saw it. But if I ever brought it up, if I ever said the words out loud suddenly, I was being sensitive, dramatic, reading too much into things. You know that moment when you realize your family's normal isn't actually normal, that other people don't live like this. I was 28 when I figured it out. I was having dinner with a friend complaining about my family, and she looked at me with this expression, pity mixed with shock, and she said, "Jessica, that's not okay. That's not normal." I laughed it off, made a joke, changed the subject, but it stuck with me. Those words, "That's not okay." I started going to therapy after that, spent 2 years unpacking my childhood, realizing that all those stories I'd told myself were just coping mechanisms, ways to make peace with being overlooked, with being the spare child, the backup, the one they kept around, because you're supposed to love all your kids even if you don't really want to. That's harsh, I know. But after 2 years of therapy, that's what it felt like. Like I was an obligation. A duty. Like they had me because that's what you do, you have kids, but they didn't really want me specifically. They wanted Rachel. Everything else was just filling space. My therapist asked me once, "What would it take for you to feel seen by your father?" I didn't have an answer. Because I'd tried everything. I'd been successful. I'd been kind. I'd been funny. I'd been helpful. I'd been present. I'd shown up to every family event. I'd called every week. I'd sent birthday cards and Christmas presents and remembered everyone's anniversaries. And none of it mattered. So I did what my therapist suggested. I lowered my expectations. I stopped trying so hard. I accepted that I had a father who loved me in his limited way, and that was enough. Or at least it had to be enough, because it was all I was going to get. And it worked. Sort of. I stopped feeling disappointed every Sunday, stopped waiting for him to notice me, stopped hoping for something that was never going to happen. I made peace with it, until he died. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was grading papers, drinking coffee, normal Tuesday morning routine. My phone rang. Tyler's name on the screen. Dad's gone. Rachel's handling arrangements. Mom's a mess. That's it. That's all the text said. Not "can you come?" Not "we need you." Just an update. Like I was on the family email list, but not actually part of the family. I called Tyler immediately. He answered on the 4th ring. What happened? Massive heart attack. At the office. He was dead. Before the ambulance got there. I waited for him to say more. He didn't. Is Mom okay? Rachel's with her. She's handling everything. Do you need me to come? I mean, yeah. Obviously. For the funeral. Obviously. For the funeral. Not because they needed me. Not because I was family. Because it would look weird if I wasn't there. When's the funeral? Saturday. Rachel's planning it. Of course she was. I hung up and sat there, staring at my coffee, at my half-graded papers, at my normal Tuesday that had just become abnormal, and I waited for the grief to hit, for the tears, for the pain. But all I felt was tired. So tired. My father was dead. And my first emotion wasn't sadness. It was exhaustion. Exhaustion at knowing I'd have to perform grief I didn't entirely feel. At knowing I'd have to comfort my mother while Rachel got all the real comfort. At knowing I'd stand at his funeral and listen to people talk about what a great man he was, what a wonderful father, while I swallowed the truth. That moment right there sitting at my kitchen table with cold coffee and the news that my father was dead. That's when something cracked inside me. Not broke, just cracked. Like ice on a frozen pond when the temperature starts to rise. You can walk on it, it holds your weight, but you can hear it. That subtle sound warning you it won't hold forever. I called my school, told them I needed the rest of the week off. Family emergency. They were understanding, sympathetic. They said, take all the time you need. I didn't need time. I needed courage. Courage to get through this without screaming. I drove to my mother's house that afternoon. Rachel's car was already in the driveway. Of course it was. She'd probably been there since morning. Being the good daughter. The devoted daughter. I walked in without knocking. Family privilege. Mom was on the couch, Rachel next to her, holding her hand. Tyler was in the kitchen making tea. The picture of a grieving family. Except nobody looked up when I walked in. Jessica, Mom said without looking at me. You're here. I'm here. Rachel needs help with the funeral arrangements. Can you pick up programs from the printer on Friday? Sure, I said. That was it. That was my role. Pick up programs, do the tasks nobody else wanted to do. Be helpful, be useful, be invisible. I sat in the chair across from them, waited for someone to acknowledge me, to hug me, to ask if I was okay. Nobody did. Rachel was talking about flower arrangements. White lilies, Dad hated lilies. Said they smelled like funeral homes. I almost said something. Almost pointed out that maybe we should choose flowers he actually liked. But what was the point? Rachel was in charge. Rachel knew best. Rachel always knew best. Mom was nodding along to everything. Yes, honey, that sounds perfect. Whatever you think is right. Tyler brought tea. Set a cup in front of Mom. Set a cup in front of Rachel. Walked right past me like I wasn't there. Tyler, I said. Can I have tea too? He looked surprised, like he genuinely hadn't noticed I was there. Oh, yeah. Sure. Sorry. The three of them existed in their little bubble of shared grief. And I sat there, watching. Like I'd always watched. Like I'd always been outside looking in. Rachel was scrolling through her phone, showing Mom pictures of different caskets. This one's mahogany. Very dignified. This one's oak, more traditional. What do you think? Mom couldn't even look at the pictures without crying. Rachel, baby, whatever you think is right. I cleared my throat. Did Dad ever mention what kind of funeral he wanted? Rachel looked at me like I'd suggested we bury him in a clown costume. He didn't talk about stuff like that, Jess. Actually, he did. I had lunch with him 6 months ago. He said when he dies, he wants something simple. No fuss, just family. Rachel's expression hardened. Well, he deserves better than simple. He deserves something befitting who he was. Who he was to you, I thought. But I didn't say it. Not then. I should have been used to it by then. After 34 years, you'd think I'd be used to it. But I wasn't. After an hour, I left. Said I had things to take care of. Nobody asked what things. Nobody asked me to stay. I drove home and I started making a list. I didn't mean to. I was just journaling. That's what my therapist had taught me. Write down your feelings. Process them on paper, but the list grew. Every memory, every hurt, every time I'd been overlooked, forgotten, treated like an afterthought. My 8th grade science fair. First place state level. Dad missed it because Rachel had a college apartment to move into. She was moving 2 blocks. He could have done it any other day, but he chose that day, my high school graduation. He spent the entire ceremony on his phone with Rachel, who was having a crisis about a boy she'd been dating for 3 weeks. While I was walking across the stage to get my diploma, he was outside comforting her. I have the photos to prove it. Well, I don't have photos of me graduating. I have photos of empty seats where my parents should have been sitting. My college graduation. He came, sat through the ceremony, then left immediately after because Rachel needed help with a work presentation. Didn't stay for pictures. Didn't take me to dinner. Just left. My roommate's parents took me out instead. They bought me flowers. They told me they were proud of me. My own father couldn't stay long enough to say the words. My first teaching job. I called to tell him. He said, "Congratulations, that's great," and then spent 20 minutes telling me about Rachel's new promotion. I remember sitting there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to him gush about how proud he was of her, waiting, hoping, maybe he'd circle back. Maybe he'd ask about my job, what age I'd be teaching, what subject, anything. He didn't. My 30th birthday. Rachel called during dinner to complain about her boyfriend. Dad spent 45 minutes on the phone with her. My birthday cake melted while we waited. Mom tried to keep the conversation going, but she kept glancing at Dad, kept waiting for him to come back. When he finally hung up and came back to the table, the candles were out. The ice cream was soup. And I was done. Every single Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every family gathering, Rachel got the good gifts, the thoughtful ones, things that showed he'd been paying attention. A first edition of her favorite book, tickets to a show she'd mentioned wanting to see, a necklace that matched her style perfectly. I got gift cards. Generic. Forgettable. 1 year he gave me the same exact gift card, 2 years in a row. Barnes & Noble. $50. I don't even read that much. That's Rachel. But he couldn't keep us straight. The time I was in the hospital with appendicitis, he visited for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Stood by my bed, checked his watch 3 times, then said he had to go. Rachel was nervous about a date. A first date with a guy from her office. He needed to be there for her. I was in a hospital bed fresh out of surgery, and my father left to help my sister pick out an outfit. The time Rachel got a flat tire, and Dad drove 2 hours to help her. Even though she lived in a city with 1,000 mechanics, and she had AAA, he dropped everything. Drove through a thunderstorm. Changed the tire himself in the pouring rain because his baby girl needed him. The next month, my car broke down completely. Engine dead. I called him. Explained the situation. Asked if he could help me figure out what to do. He sent me the number of a tow truck company. A phone number. That was it. On and on. Page after page. Years of being second place. Of being the backup child. Of being loved technically, but never really wanted. By the time I finished, I had 15 pages. 15 pages of moments where I wasn't enough. Where Rachel was everything and I was nothing. And I stared at those pages. At the evidence of 34 years of being invisible. And I thought, what am I supposed to do with this? The next few days were a blur of funeral preparations. Rachel texted me tasks. Pick up the programs, order flowers for the church entrance, make sure the restaurant has enough tables reserved for the reception. Tasks. That's all I was good for. Tasks. The viewing was Thursday night. I showed up early thinking maybe I could have a moment alone with Dad. Say goodbye in private, without Rachel orchestrating every emotion. But when I got there, Rachel was already in the viewing room. Standing by the casket, crying beautifully. Even her grief was perfect. I stood in the doorway watching her. She was touching Dad's hand, whispering something I couldn't hear. Her shoulders shook with delicate sobs, and I felt nothing. Just that same exhaustion. That same crack in the ice getting wider. I walked up beside her. She didn't acknowledge me. "Hey," I said softly. She wiped her eyes. "Hey. You okay?" She laughed, a bitter sound. "Am I okay? Our father just died, Jess." "No, I'm not okay." "I know. I just meant." She turned to look at me. Really looked at me. And for a second I thought maybe she'd see it. See the hurt I'd been carrying. See that I was struggling too. But she just said, "I need you to greet people when they arrive. Make sure they sign the guest book. Can you do that?" "Sure," I said. She went back to Dad. Back to her private grief. I walked to the entrance and stood by the guest book, the designated greeter, the task manager, the invisible daughter. People started arriving. Dad's co-workers, his friends, extended family I hadn't seen in years. And every single person had the same reaction. They'd hug Rachel, tell her how sorry they were for her loss, how hard this must be for her, how close she and her father were. Then they'd turn to me. "Oh, hi, Jessica. Sorry for your loss," and move on. Like my grief was an afterthought. Like I was an afterthought. My Aunt Linda arrived with my uncle. She made a beeline for Rachel, wrapped her in a hug that lasted a full minute. When she finally let go, she turned to me. "Jessica, honey, you're holding up okay?" "I'm fine." "Good. That's good. Rachel needs you to be strong right now. She and your father were so close. This is just devastating for her." I nodded. Smiled. Played my part. I watched Rachel all night. Watched person after person tell her how special her relationship with Dad was. Watched her cry and accept comfort and share stories about their bond. And not one person mentioned me. Not one person said you were close too. Not one person acknowledged that I'd also lost a father, because I hadn't been close to him. Everyone knew it, including me. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. Around 8 o'clock I stepped outside. I needed air, needed space, needed to not watch Rachel be the grieving daughter while I played background support. Tyler was out there smoking. He'd quit 2 years ago, but apparently grief was a good enough excuse to start again. "You okay?" he asked. "Everyone keeps asking me that, because you look like you're about to snap." I laughed. "Do I?" "Yeah. You've got that look. That I'm barely holding it together look." I sat down on the bench next to him. "Are you okay?" He took a long drag. "Honestly, I don't know. I'm sad, but also, I'm not sure what I lost." You know, I did know. God, I knew exactly what he meant. "Did you ever feel like he didn't really see you?" I asked. Tyler was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. "Yeah, but I made peace with it. Stopped caring. It's easier that way." "Is it easier?" He looked at me. "I don't know. Is what you're doing easier?" "I'm not doing anything. You're keeping score, Jess. I can see it. You've been keeping score your whole life." He was right. I had been. The funeral was Saturday morning. 10 o'clock. I wore black. Obviously. Rachel wore black too, but somehow she looked elegant. Put together. Like she was going to a sophisticated event not burying our father. The church was packed. I didn't realize Dad knew this many people. Or maybe they didn't know him. Maybe they just came because that's what you do. You show up. You pay respects. I sat in the front row. Mom on one end, Rachel next to her, then me, then Tyler. The family row. Except it didn't feel like family. It felt like a performance. The service started with a hymn. Something traditional. Something Dad probably never listened to in his life. Then the pastor spoke. Talked about Dad's life. His career. His dedication. His family. His loving relationship with his daughter Rachel. Not daughters. Daughter. Singular. I glanced at Rachel. She was crying. Again. Those perfect tears. Then came the eulogies. Rachel went first. Of course she did. She walked to the podium, composed herself, looked out at the crowd. "My father was the most important person in my life," she began, and I felt something snap. Not the crack getting wider, the whole thing breaking, clean through. She talked about Saturday morning pancakes, just the two of them, every weekend of her childhood. She made it sound magical, special, a sacred ritual. She didn't mention that the rest of us weren't invited, that Dad made pancakes for her before Tyler and I woke up, that by the time we came downstairs he was already done, already moving on to other things. She talked about college, how Dad helped her move in every year, helped her decorate her dorm room, took her shopping for supplies, how he called her every single day to check in. She didn't mention that he'd helped me move into college exactly once. Freshman year. And he'd stayed for an hour. Didn't help me unpack. Didn't take me shopping. Just dropped me off and left. She talked about her career, how Dad was her biggest cheerleader, how he'd come to every work event, every presentation, every celebration, how proud he was of everything she accomplished. She didn't mention that he'd never come to a single one of my school events, not one parent-teacher night, not one school play I'd directed, not one award ceremony. She talked about their Sunday phone calls, how Dad would call her every morning on his drive to work, how they'd talk for hours about everything and nothing, how she'd miss those calls more than anything. She didn't mention that I'd called him every Sunday for 15 years, and he'd spend 5 minutes on the phone before handing it to Mom. She talked about their special bond, how some relationships are just different, how she and Dad understood each other in a way that was rare, precious, how she was his favorite. She didn't say those words, but she meant them. Everyone heard them, and then she said something that made me see red. My father taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice. It's showing up. It's being present. It's putting the people you love first always. And he did that every day of my life. He showed me what unconditional love looks like. Unconditional. That word. That fucking word. Because if his love for Rachel was unconditional, what was his love for me? Conditional based on what? On me being born second, on me not being her. Rachel finished her eulogy, walked back to her seat. Mom grabbed her hand. Tyler put his arm around her. Nobody looked at me. The pastor asked if anyone else wanted to share. A few of Dad's co-workers stood up, told nice stories about him, funny anecdotes. He was a good man, a hard worker, a loyal friend. Then my Aunt Linda stood up. "I want to talk about David as a father," she said. Here we go, I thought. She talked about how devoted he was to his family, how he'd do anything for his kids, how proud he was of all of them. All of them. Plural. Finally. But then she said, especially Rachel. The bond those two had was something special. Something we all saw. Something we all admired. I dug my nails into my palms, tried to breathe. She went on, and on, about how Rachel was the light of Dad's life, how their relationship was an example of what a father-daughter bond should be. And I sat there, in the front row, at my father's funeral, listening to person after person talk about how much he loved my sister. Not me. Not Tyler. Rachel. The pastor asked one more time if anyone wanted to speak, and I don't know what came over me. I didn't plan it. I swear I didn't plan it. But I stood up. Mom grabbed my arm. "Jessica, what are you doing?" "I need to say something." Rachel looked at me, her eyes wide, panicked. "Please don't," she mouthed. But I was already walking to the podium. I stood there, looking out at 75 people, all of them staring at me, waiting, and I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app, found the list I'd made. "I want to share a different perspective," I said. My voice was steady, calm. That surprised me. I thought I'd be shaking, crying, angry, but I wasn't. I was just done. Rachel gave a beautiful eulogy about her relationship with our father, and everything she said was true. He did call her every day, he did go to all her events, he did prioritize her, always. I could see people nodding, agreeing. And I want to talk about what that looked like for everyone else. The room went very quiet. When I was in 8th grade, I won first place at the state science fair. It was the biggest achievement of my life at that point. I was so proud, so excited. I called Dad immediately, told him the date of the award ceremony, begged him to come. He said he'd try. The day of the ceremony, he didn't show up. I kept watching the door, kept hoping. The whole time I was on stage accepting my award, I was looking for him in the crowd. He wasn't there. He was helping Rachel move into her college apartment, 2 blocks from her old apartment, something that could have waited, but didn't. Because when Rachel needed him, everything else stopped mattering, including me. I looked at my phone, at the list, at decades of invisible moments. When I graduated high school, Dad spent my entire graduation ceremony on the phone with Rachel. She was upset about a boy she'd been dating for 3 weeks. And that was more important than watching me graduate. When I graduated college, he left immediately after the ceremony. Didn't stay for photos, didn't take me to dinner. Rachel needed help with a work presentation, so he left. My roommate's parents took me out to celebrate instead. Strangers cared more about my achievement than my own father did. I could hear people shifting in their seats. Uncomfortable. But I wasn't done. When I got my first teaching job, I called to tell him. He said congratulations and then spent 20 minutes telling me about Rachel's promotion. Didn't ask me a single question about my job. What age I'd be teaching. What school. What subject. Nothing. My 30th birthday. Rachel called during dinner to complain about her boyfriend. Dad talked to her for 45 minutes, while my birthday cake melted, while my family sat there waiting. When he finally came back to the table, he didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge that he'd missed my entire birthday, because Rachel's problems were always more important than my celebrations. Every Christmas, Every Thanksgiving, every family gathering, Rachel got thoughtful gifts that showed he'd been paying attention. I got gift cards. Generic. Forgettable. One year, he gave me the same gift card 2 years in a row. Because he couldn't remember what he'd given me. Because he wasn't paying attention. Because I didn't matter enough to remember. When I was in the hospital with appendicitis fresh out of surgery, he visited for 20 minutes, then left. Because Rachel was nervous about a first date and needed help picking out an outfit. A first date was more important than his daughter recovering from surgery. When Rachel got a flat tire, Dad drove 2 hours through a thunderstorm to help her. Changed the tire himself, got soaked to the bone, because his baby girl needed him. The next month, my car broke down completely. I called him for help. He texted me the number of a tow truck company. That was it, a phone number. I looked up from my phone, at the stunned faces staring back at me. My father didn't love me less than Rachel. I know that. But he loved me differently. He loved me conditionally. He loved me when it was convenient, when Rachel didn't need him, when it didn't require effort. And I spent 34 years trying to earn the kind of love he gave her automatically, trying to be good enough, trying to be seen. I never was. My voice cracked. Just a little. So, when you talk about my father, when you say what a devoted father he was, what an amazing man, I want you to remember that there were 3 of us, not just Rachel. 3. And one of us spent our entire life being invisible to him. That's my truth. That's my story. And I'm done pretending it didn't happen. I'm done protecting his image. I'm done being the understanding one. The flexible one. The one who doesn't make waves. He's gone now. And I can finally say it. Finally admit it. I wasn't enough for him, and I'm tired of pretending that's okay. I walked back to my seat. The entire church was silent. You could hear breathing. That's how quiet it was. Rachel's face was white, pale, shocked. Mom was crying, real crying, shaking, gasping sobs. Tyler was staring at me, his expression unreadable, and I sat down, put my phone away, and waited for whatever came next. The pastor tried to continue the service, tried to say something about grief and family and healing, but his voice was shaky, uncertain. Nobody was listening anyway. The rest of the funeral passed in a blur. People avoided eye contact with me. The energy in the room had shifted. What was supposed to be a celebration of Dad's life had become something else. Something uncomfortable. Something honest. At the cemetery, I stood apart from the family. Not by choice. They just moved away from me. Mom, Rachel, and Tyler on one side of the casket, me on the other. Like I was already excommunicated. Rachel wouldn't look at me. Mom wouldn't stop crying. Tyler kept glancing at me, then looking away. After they lowered the casket, people started leaving. Nobody talked to me. Nobody knew what to say. I'd violated some unspoken rule. You don't speak ill of the dead. You don't air family secrets. You don't ruin funerals with truth. But I had. The reception was at Mom's house. I almost didn't go. Almost drove straight home. But I'd come this far. I might as well see it through. When I walked in, the room went quiet. People stopped talking. Just stared. I headed straight for the kitchen. Poured myself a glass of water. Tried to ignore the whispers starting up behind me. My uncle found me first. "Jessica," he said quietly. That took courage. Or stupidity. He smiled. A sad smile. Maybe both. But someone needed to say it. "You knew." Everyone knew, honey. We all saw it. We didn't know what to do about it. It's not our place to interfere in how parents treat their kids. Even when it's wrong. He didn't have an answer for that. My Aunt Linda approached next. Her face was hard, angry. "That was cruel," she said. "Your father isn't here to defend himself. He had 34 years to defend himself, to explain, to change. He didn't. You embarrassed this family. You made Rachel's grief about you. Rachel's been making everything about her for 37 years. I just finally said it out loud. She shook her head. You're selfish. You always have been. And she walked away. More people approached. Some supportive, some angry, some just curious. But the 3 people I needed to talk to, Mom, Rachel, Tyler, they stayed away from me, stayed in a tight circle in the living room, the real family, and me, the outsider. After an hour, I'd had enough. I grabbed my purse, headed for the door. Tyler caught me in the hallway. Wait, he said. I need to go. I know, but I need to say something first. He looked nervous, uncomfortable. What you said, at the funeral. You were right, about all of it. I knew it too. I handled it by not caring, by detaching. But you're right, Tyler. No, listen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I never stood up for you, never backed you up. I took the easy way out, let you be invisible, while I stayed safe. It's not your fault. Maybe not. But I didn't help, and I should have. He pulled me into a hug. A real hug. The kind we hadn't shared since we were kids. When he let go, he said, Rachel's destroyed. Mom's furious. But me, I'm proud of you. For finally saying it, even though I ruined the funeral. You didn't ruin it. You made it honest. I left after that, drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts, just silence. When I got home, I had 32 text messages, 17 from family members, 15 from friends who'd heard what happened. The family messages were split. Half called me brave, half called me cruel. Nobody was neutral. I didn't respond to any of them. I just sat on my couch, in my quiet apartment, and I waited to feel something. Regret, guilt, satisfaction, anything. But I just felt empty, like I'd been carrying this weight for so long that now that it was gone, I didn't know how to stand up straight. Days passed. Then, weeks. Rachel didn't call, didn't text. Complete silence. Mom called once. Her voice cold. I need time, Jessica. What you did. I can't talk to you right now. I understand. Do you understand what you took from this family, the peace we had? The peace you had, I corrected. I never had peace. She hung up. Tyler texted me regularly, checking in, making sure I was okay. We started having dinner once a week. Really talking, really connecting. For the first time in our lives, we were honest with each other. About our childhood. About Dad. About the family we'd both been pretending was normal. Turns out he'd been keeping his own list. Not written down, but in his head. All the times Dad had dismissed him, ignored him, prioritized Rachel. We're both broken, he said one night over Thai food. Dad broke us in different ways. You by trying too hard, me by giving up. Can broken people fix themselves? I don't know, but maybe we can try. 3 weeks after the funeral, Rachel finally reached out. Not a call, not a text, an email. Long, detailed, raw. She started by saying she hated me. That, what I did, was unforgivable. That I'd ruined Dad's funeral, hurt Mom, embarrassed the family. But then, the email shifted. She said she'd been thinking, really thinking, about everything I'd said, and she realized I was right. She wrote that she'd never noticed the favoritism, never saw it. Because when you're at the center of someone's world, you don't look around to see who's standing in the shadows. She wrote that she'd always assumed we had the same relationship with Dad, that he loved us equally, that I'd just chosen to be more independent, more distant. She wrote that she'd gone through old family photos, old cards, old emails, and she'd seen it, really seen it. The difference, the disparity, the favoritism, and she was sorry. Not just sorry for not noticing. Sorry for being complicit. For accepting all of Dad's attention without questioning if it was fair. For never once thinking about what that might mean for me. She ended the email with a question. Can we talk? Not now. I'm not ready. But someday, can we try to figure this out? I stared at that email for hours, read it over and over, and finally I wrote back, someday. When you're ready, I'll be here. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. A month after the funeral, I went back to therapy. Told my therapist everything that happened. She asked me if I regretted it. I don't know, I said honestly. Some days I think I did the right thing, that I finally stood up for myself, finally told the truth. Some days I think I was cruel, that I weaponized my pain, that there was a better way. Is there a better way? She asked. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe this was the only way I could finally be heard, by destroying the peace everyone else needed. Do you feel better? I thought about that, really thought about it. No, I said. I don't feel better, but I feel free. Like I'm not carrying that weight anymore. Like I can breathe for the first time. That's not nothing. She was right. It wasn't nothing. 2 months after the funeral, Mom finally agreed to see me. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. She looked older, tired. Grief had aged her. I'm still angry, she said immediately. I know, but I've been thinking about what you said, about how we treated you, and I don't know if I agree with all of it. But some of it is true, and I'm sorry for my part in that. It wasn't an admission of fault. Not really. But it was something. Your father loved you, she said. In his way, I know. But his way wasn't enough for me, and I'm done pretending it was. She nodded. Slowly. Like she was finally understanding. We talked for an hour. It wasn't easy. It wasn't healing. But it was honest. Maybe for the first time in my life, we were being honest with each other. 3 months after the funeral, I'm still processing. Still figuring out what comes next. Rachel and I text occasionally. Short messages. Nothing deep. But it's something. We're trying. Both of us. Tyler and I are closer than we've ever been. We talk about our childhood now. About the things we never said. About the family we wished we'd had. Mom is speaking to me, but there's still distance. Still hurt. I don't know if that will ever fully heal. Maybe it won't. Maybe some wounds are permanent. I think about Dad sometimes. About who he was. About why he loved Rachel so much more than the rest of us. Was it something about her? Something about me? Something in him that made him capable of that level of favoritism? I'll never know. He's gone. And with him, any chance of understanding. Any chance of explanation. Any chance of change. But here's what I do know. I spent 34 years being invisible. 34 years trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. 34 years making myself smaller so other people could be comfortable. At my father's funeral, surrounded by people who barely knew I existed, I finally chose myself. I finally spoke my truth. I finally stopped protecting everyone else and started protecting me. Was it the right way to do it? I honestly don't know. Was it the wrong time? Probably. Definitely. But was it necessary? For me? Yes. It was the only time I felt like anyone would really hear me. The only time they couldn't interrupt, couldn't dismiss, couldn't change the subject. Rachel sent me another email yesterday. Longer this time. She said she's been in therapy too. Dealing with her own stuff. The pressure of being the golden child. The fear of disappointing people. The loneliness of being on a pedestal. She said she wants to meet, really talk, not just text, face to face. I haven't responded yet. I will, but I'm taking my time. For the first time in my life, I'm putting my healing first. My timeline, my pace. And that feels radical, revolutionary. Like I'm learning to take up space instead of making myself small. My therapist asked me last week if I would do it again. If I could go back knowing what I know now, would I still stand up at that funeral? I thought about it for a long time, and I said yes. Yes, I would. Because for 34 years I was the understanding one, the flexible one, the one who didn't make waves. And it destroyed me slowly, piece by piece, year by year. At the funeral I made waves, big ones, destructive ones, waves that hurt people I love. But I also saved myself, saved my voice, saved my truth. And sometimes saving yourself means destroying the peace other people need. Sometimes speaking your truth means making other people uncomfortable. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone. I'm still figuring out if that's okay, if the cost was worth it, but here's what I know for sure. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not the backup child. I'm not the afterthought. I'm Jessica. I'm 34 years old. I'm a teacher. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. And I'm done being second place in my own life. My father is gone. The version of our family that existed before the funeral is gone too. And I'm still figuring out if what's left is better or just different. But for the first time in my life, I'm not apologizing for taking up space. I'm not shrinking myself to make others comfortable. I'm not swallowing my hurt to preserve someone else's happiness. And that has to count for something. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was cruel. Maybe there was a better way to do it. Or maybe, just maybe, I should have done it years ago. Rachel's email is still sitting in my inbox, unanswered, waiting. I'll respond, soon, when I'm ready. Because that's another thing I'm learning. I get to decide when I'm ready. Not them, not my family, not anyone else. Me. For the first time in 34 years, I'm choosing me. And whether that makes me brave or selfish, right or wrong, a hero or a villain, I'm still not sure. But I'm okay with not being sure. I'm okay with the uncertainty. I'm okay with the mess I made. Because the alternative was spending the rest of my life invisible. And I'm done with that. I'm done being the girl nobody sees. I'm finally visible. Finally heard. Finally real. And that's worth everything.